everybody else getting a phone dial-in option only? That's very strange. Let me try this again.
It'll be okay like that.
So we need like instrumental. That's what we want. Hey, there we go. I need to change this setting. Let's see here. Edit this webinar real quick. Q&A, telephone.
2 viewers on Twitter. Huh? We have 2 viewers on Twitter.
Hey! Hi, Twitter. We're just about to get started with our radio show. We're going live here. We're talking about adding value to get hired. And I think we're good to start now. I just had to change a couple of the settings on the webinar here. We're streaming on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and for members only on Zoom. Okay, now we are in. Let me make sure that we got the audio set up here. We are good. All right, Vanessa, can you hear me okay? I might need to promote you, right?
Yes.
Thank you, co-host. Mary, your co-host too. And we're going to start broadcasting here on Zoom for our members. For our members in the private Facebook group. Good to see you on, Kelly. Good to see you on, Paul. YouTube, you're here as well. We have you at a slight angle. Let's see if we can fix it just a little bit. Maybe. We'll fix it. We'll find a way. So hi, YouTube. And hello, Twitter. Good to see you on as well. I'm going to make sure we can go and start streaming here on Facebook. On the Facebook fan page. We're about to get started with another Cheeky Scientist radio show. We're talking about adding value this week. Let's see, here we go. Preparing the live stream. 1 minute to go. Nothing like getting things ready just in time. So for those of you joining us on Zoom, good to see you on. We're going to get started here very, very soon. We're just connecting one more live streaming service. We are streaming everywhere today. Very excited to be doing so. Live now. Advanced adding value strategies for getting hired. Nothing like watching somebody type something out. That's excitement. All right, we're going to get started here very, very shortly in just 1 minute. Today's the 12th. 18, and let's see here. That's all right. I think I could change my name. Clearly I'm not Tim. If you're seeing me be Tim, we're using an alternate Zoom account today. There we go. And Cheeky Scientist Radio. All right, so we're just going to confirm that we're going live on the Facebook fan page. Good to see all of you on. I see a lot of our Cheeky Scientist associates on live already. So hello, Agni. Hello, Bo. Brandon. Hello, Emma. George. Jara. Jessica. Christy. Good to see you on. Kai. Good to see you on. Lisa. Mad Harima. Good to see you on. Mario. Martha. Michael. Pravin. Sahana. Swati. Kasuya. Zia. Good to see you on. See a lot of you commenting. Remember to change your drop-down menu to all panelists and attendees if you are one of our members joining us live on Zoom. If you're watching us on this second camera angle, if you are a member, Sanjeet Aditya, you can join us on Zoom where you can get your questions answered, and if you have a very important question, you can come on live too. I see a lot of you on YouTube. Just going to change that angle just a bit, and I'll move forward. If you're on Twitter joining us, welcome. We are about to start another Cheeky Scientist radio show, so let's get started. Welcome to Cheeky Scientist Radio. This week's show is all about adding value, advanced adding value strategies for getting hired or getting promoted. We have a lot of great guests on today, but before I bring our guests on, I want to bring on our team members who made this possible, including our lead producer, Vanessa. Hello, Vanessa. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. I'm so excited about the show. It's going to be really fun.
Awesome. And I'm going to turn our volume up here. So good to see you on, Vanessa. Please say hi to Vanessa in the chat box or in a comment if you can see Vanessa. And hello, Mary. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. I'm really excited about the show today, too.
Awesome. And let's just get confirmation that we are actually streaming on the fan page. Let me check that real quick. I should be able to see it on my end as well. And we also have on Jeanette. Let me see if I can get on Jeanette. Jeanette, are you able to turn on your video? Jeanette's going to be joining us a little bit later, but she did make this possible as well.
It says I cannot turn my video on.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make you co-host then as well, and then it should give you that option. But we can hear you. That's great news.
It is, and now you can see me.
There we go. All right. So the audio is a bit low on our end. Let me see if I can turn this up. There we go. And you're coming out of the speakers. Okay, so we are good to go. Welcome, everyone. We're talking about adding value today. So we're going to go through our Show Me the Data section. We're going to talk a lot about building reciprocal professional relationships. There's a ton of data on this. A lot of studies have been done, especially in the fields of behavioral psychology. And we're going to dig through some of that here very, very shortly. We also have on John Ruhlin, who is the CEO of the Ruhlin Group, the largest gifting service in the world, an amazing guy, and he's going to tell us how to add value to people, even if you don't think you have a lot of value to add. How in today's world, if you want to get a job, if you want to advance your career, really do anything, you have to come at it from a very different mindset, an adding value mindset, a gifting mindset, a thanking people mindset, something that as PhDs we're really not used to doing. And one of our goals on Cheeky Scientist Radio is to bring you crossover guests you would not have exposure to otherwise, people who can give you a different mindset, an industry mindset, a more creative mindset in terms of how to advance your career, whether that's transitioning or whether that's getting promoted. So very excited to have him on. He'll be joining us in about, let's say, 15 minutes. We also have on Yuri Klachkin, who is a medical science liaison. He's actually a manager, does medical science liaison hiring currently at Celgene. He's worked at Bristol Myers Squibb as well. He is a big proponent of, as he calls it, AVF, right? Adding value first. It's how he got his first job. He has an amazing story to tell. He was unemployed not once but twice, and is now very successful in industry, so we'll be bringing him on. We're going to do a few different LinkedIn profile reviews live. Okay, so whether you're joining us on YouTube, hello YouTube, it keeps scooting over. I'm going to adjust the camera there. And Twitter, we're going to do some LinkedIn profile reviews. We have 3 that we're going to go through so you can see some differences, some comparisons. We're going to talk about some PhDs who have recently transitioned into industry, so a great show lined up. We're going to jump in now to the Show Me the Data section. But before I do that, I want to share my screen and go through a couple of reminders for both those of you that are in the PhD public and those of you who are members here. So let me share my screen and make sure that the right stuff is showing here. If you can see my screen, can you do me a favor in the chat box and type in yes? I would appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. All right, really appreciate it. Lisa, Alex, Bo, thank you very much. All right, so what you're looking at here, now if you're watching us, if you're in the PhD public, you're watching us on our public Cheeky Scientist page. If you are not a Cheeky Scientist associate, you are interested in transitioning into industry, you don't know where to start, or you've been uploading resumes and you haven't heard anything back, you're not hired, we have a free resume webinar tomorrow, okay? It's at 1 p.m. and again at 9 p.m. both Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, Thursday, September 13th. Just put your name and email address on this link. We're going to put this link in the public comment boxes for you. Okay, so if you're on Twitter, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, we will add these links for you. You can see the URL here. It's just cheekyscientist.com/PhD-industry-resume. Always fun reading URLs. Second, if you are interested in becoming a Cheeky Scientist Associate, maybe you've heard through word of mouth that the association helps PhDs get hired. We're having some, we're bumping the desk here. It's okay. It's like a live action shot. It's like an action movie. All right, so this is the waitlist page. So we're opening up enrollment into the association on Monday. If you are not an associate, you want to get hired, you want to learn the ins and outs, you want to get all of our free stuff, all you have to do is go to this page and put in your name and email address. You can go to phdsgethired.com. That's an easy one to remember. I always sound like an infomercial when I say that. phdsgethired.com, right? But it's just an easy way to remember it in case you don't want to remember this longer URL. But we will put this URL on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This is where you can put your name and email address to get all of our free ebooks and our materials and stay up to date with everything that's going to happen over this enrollment period starting on Monday. What's the date? Somebody tell me. September 12th. No, the Monday that we start enrollments. 2 weeks. 24th. Thank you. Monday, the 24th. Lots of dates to remember. So in about 2 weeks. Now, if you are an associate watching, we have a special associate only. So in the Cheeky Scientist Association, we have some advanced programs for very, very specific and competitive career tracks. One of them that we offer only to members is the Medical Science Liaison Alliance. Enrollment for this opens up this next Monday. This is the page to get on the wait list if you want to learn more about this program. MSL positions, it's the 4th highest starting position in the US right now, and it's very similar in many different countries. Europe, Australia, they all have positions that are either titled medical science liaison or different types of liaisoning positions. Liaising positions, I think that's the right way to say it. So if you want to learn more how to get into these roles, it's very popular, very competitive, well over 100% increase year over year in terms of PhDs getting into this role. This is the page that you can sign up on, the Medical Science Liaison Alliance. And if you remember, we also have an MSL webinar tonight. Well, tonight, depending on where you are, it's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be bringing on Yuri and other MSLs and talking about what exactly this career track is and how to get into it. We always get questions on what the MSL program is. That's going to make me log in. So it's a completely separate program with a completely separate login, and it's also a completely separate private group. One thing I love about the Medical Science Liaison Alliance is that Yuri and Elizabeth do a great job as program leaders. I'll just show you some snapshots here real quick. In that group, Elizabeth and Yuri do a lot of live video mock interviews, specifically for MSL positions with the MSLA members. You can see a few of them here. I'm just showing you on the screen. And this is crucial in terms of getting hired because the MSL career track, very specific, very competitive. You have to know how to speak very well. You have to know how to carry yourself very well in front of other MDs and other professionals. And we've seen so many PhDs get hired. I'm just showing a couple of these people, including Heather, who was recently hired into an MSL position. She says, "Woot woot! Guess who has guess who was just offered a job as an MSL?" Casey was recently hired as an MSL too, and she has gone from working from not having a job to having a job. Bill Daly as well says, "Hey everyone, I just got my offer letter. I have been given a very generous package and officially sent in my acceptance for the position this evening." All right, so what better way to learn how to get into an MSL job than from MSLs, especially MSLs who hire MSLs. All right, so we're going to jump into the Show Me the Data section. I'm going to bring on Jeanette here. Can you type in yes one more time in the chat box for members if you can see my screen? You should be reading something that says humans are wired to reciprocate the action when given something, when something is given. Okay, Jeanette, are you on? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I'm on. Can hear you.
All right, if you can speak up just a little bit, but that's perfect.
I can be loud.
We can hear you. All right, so this first table, right? It's showing that humans reciprocate an action when given something. This is from a figure from eva.mpg.de. So this is out of Germany. We're looking at a table here with the condition on the left. It says shared with child, fell near child, shared with receiver, fell near receiver. Maybe you can set this experiment up for us. What were they looking at?
Yeah, of course. So this is looking at the number of times that a child shared with someone.
Yes.
Right, a number of times that they were willing to share, and based on those different conditions. Right. So when you look, you can see that it's like when they fell down near the child, did they then try to share something with them? Right. And it's really clear, it's like super clear when they shared the most often is when they were previously shared with. So they're more likely to share with someone who has already shared with them because they're wired to like reciprocate this action. As humans, we want to give back when someone has given something to us.
Yeah, and you know the psychology behind reciprocation is something that's studied quite a bit, you know, and it can be both good and bad. You see some people obviously trying to abuse this. You know, one experiment that I remember reading about, I think it was in the book called Influence, The Power of Persuasion, was that certain groups would be inside an airport and they would give you something, right, for free, but then they would ask you for like a donation or for money afterwards. And I think that's a real clear use of where you're trying to get something more than the value that you're giving, right? It was like a free pen or whatever, and then they ask you for, you know, like a $10 donation. And so I think the key here is that you want to reciprocate value for value, the same level, or, you know, ideally give more value than you're getting. So this was, again, showing the number of children who shared with the giver puppet, right? So we're just looking at a child's propensity to share and how this is hardwired into us from a very young age, right? I love this next figure. So this is from PubMed. It's an article titled "Those Who Choose to Be Cooperative Are Rated as More Trustworthy." So again, we're looking at reciprocation, cooperation, trustworthiness. All of this has to do with exchanging value. Jeanette, can you walk us through this figure here? So I'll lay out what the figure looks like for those of you listening by audio. We have a trustworthiness rating right on the y-axis, and then it's a bar graph, and we're looking at a green bar graph that shows cooperative, a red bar graph that shows uncooperative, and in this first chart, just an orange bar graph that shows neutral. So can you walk us through this, Jeanette?
Yeah, of course. So this is just showing that if someone is more cooperative, or if they're cooperative versus uncooperative, that the person has rated them as more trustworthy, which I think is sort of intuitive, right? You sort of think, yeah, of course, if someone's going to cooperate with me, I'm going to trust them more than if they keep not cooperating with me. That sort of makes sense, but it's nice to see it laid out like this, right, and to realize that this is how you can build trust with your network. So when you set up situations where you can cooperate with them, where you give them something, right, and then something is given back, these cooperative interactions are a really fast way to build up that trustworthiness in that relationship.
Exactly. And by the way, your bow tie almost matches the left bar graph. I like it. So no, this is really important, right? Because we're thinking, some of you are probably like, wow, thank you, duh, Isaiah. Yeah, if you're cooperative, I'm going to trust you more. Thanks for the groundbreaking research. But as PhDs, right, we sometimes we know things qualitatively, right? Like it's common sense. But we want to see the data. We want to see it quantitatively laid out. And so we're showing you that even with, see these, look at, there's even a statistical significance here, right? There's p-values associated with this. Hey, cooperation will show more trustworthiness. Now think about it, if you're a recruiter, hiring manager, who usually doesn't have a PhD, you're trying to get hired, what is the number one thing that they're looking for overall? Trustworthiness. How can you demonstrate trustworthiness? Cooperation. Okay, so if you work backwards, you can see the real value here. I want to go on to this next figure. This is one that we've talked about a lot. I would show this figure every single radio show if I could. I think it's really great. And it's very relevant for the guests that we're bringing on today. And we bring on a lot of guests who are not PhDs to show you that, look, you have to start thinking differently if you want to be successful in industry, whether you already have an industry job or you're trying to get your first one. And one thing that makes people successful is connecting with different types of people. So can you give us a quick rundown of this chart one more time, Jeanette, for those of us who have not seen it yet?
Yeah, of course. So on the y-axis, you've got the relative performance, so like the success level. And then on the x-axis, you've got the network constraint. So whether your network is small and closed, like you're only connected to other PhDs, or it's open and you're connected to like a lot of diverse people from different backgrounds and different places.
Yes.
And as your network becomes more open, your performance goes up.
Yes.
So that's what the red line is showing.
Right. So, and performance in terms of compensation. You want to get paid more in industry, have a larger, more open network. Okay. You want to get higher scores in terms of your evaluations that you'll get, 6 months after starting your job, every year, et cetera, et cetera. You want to get promoted faster. All of that, right, is correlated. And in many cases, there have been additional studies that even have showed causation here. The larger, the more open your network is, the better you're going to perform, the more successful you're going to be in industry. And this shouldn't surprise you so much, because we've seen this trend in the literature when it comes to innovation too, right? The more you can connect disparate things, right, very different things, the faster you're going to innovate. So the more you can connect very different types of people, groups of people, the more you can be connected with these different types of people, the more successful you are going to be. And again, this is a great lead into our guest, John Ruhlin from the Ruhlin Group, because he's connected with many different types of people, he's gifted people in countries all around the world, right? And bringing these networks together is very, very powerful, and that's something that we're going to talk about too. Okay, very quickly, two more figures I think we have time for. Thank you notes make connections feel valued. So we always get questions from PhDs after an interview, informational interview. What should I send? Is it worth writing out a thank you note? What does this little infographic say, Jeanette?
It says that you should definitely send a thank you note.
Short and sweet.
It's because so the best statistic here, I think, is this 86% of hiring managers said that it shows a lack of like follow through, right? Which
Yes.
is going to decrease your competency level that they see you as, right? They don't think you can even send a thank you note. So how are you going to be able to do the job? That's my favorite one based on this. It's just something so simple that you can do to show that you value the time they spent with you.
Yes.
And that you really want the job. But if you don't, they're like, well, they must not care that much.
Bye-bye. Yeah, so what's really important here is that, a lot of you as PhDs, you think, I don't have any value to add, or I don't have a budget for adding value. Can you write a thank you note, right? Can you write it on a piece of printer paper in your lab and put it in an envelope that your lab likely has too, and make it personal? Yes, you can absolutely do that. This is something we're going to talk about with John as well. So I think we're going to end it there. Jeanette, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. We always want to go through the data first, because we know how you think as PhDs, right? That's how we all think. So please thank Jeanette in the chat box or in the comments on YouTube or Twitter or on Facebook. Next up, I'm going to bring on John. I'm going to show his bio here first. So John Ruhlin is ranked #1 in sales in the 70-year history for one of the largest direct sales companies in the world. His ranking and broken record still stand among the 1 million plus distributors that have walked through their doors, his company doors. His firm specializes, it's called the Ruhlin Group, specializes in teaching fast-growing service firms how to stand out, be memorable, and become even more referable through Giftology. I've been sharing this book all week. Giftology, great name. We love, as PhDs, we love anything that ends in ology. All right, the art and science of using gifts, the art and science of using gifts to cut through the noise, drive referrals, and strengthen retention. John's company also helps firms develop and execute the logistics of a high-end gifting programs to open up doors with impossible to reach C-level prospects and drive referrals from current clients. We have a big push to get PhDs into as many C-level positions as possible, so you need to pay attention to this. John's clients span across all sizes and industries, including UBS, Raymond James, that's FUBU, right? Wells Fargo, Chicago Bears, San Antonio Spurs, MGM, Shell, Chevron, Orlando Magic, Memphis Grizzlies, D.R. Horton, Miami Dolphins, Caesars Entertainment, John Maxwell, Darren Hardy, Tom Searcy, Shep Hyken, Jason Gagnard, and many, many more. He lives just outside of St. Louis with his wife, Lindsay, and 3 daughters. His second book, Giftology, was released on June 20th, 2016. Definitely check it out. We've put all of the relevant links in there to his book, to his company. He's been featured on Forbes, John, great to have you on. How are you doing today?
Awesome, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on too. And your mic's a little bit low. I don't know. Is everybody else hearing John okay? We can.
How about now?
A little bit low. It's all right. Let's see here. We are used to this on Zoom. So if you can see John in the chat box, can you say hi, John, please? Let's make sure we can see him. And I'm going to. Nope, can't see him yet. All right, let's see what we can do here. We're going to spotlight the video. See, I'm learning how to use Zoom. Great. So we can see John now. And then, John, yeah, it might be better without the microphone if you want to give it a try. I've seen it happen before.
How about now?
Oh, yeah. There we go. Way better.
Is that better?
John, good to see you. Thanks for being on. Yes.
Okay.
We
The
can all...
interesting thing is that I can't hear you now. So
Oh,
let's.
okay. Maybe, let's see. Let me try. If you go to your Zoom drop down on where the mute is. Oh, you can't hear me. That's not going to help. Maybe we can help Vanessa if you want to type in the chat box and let him know that if he clicks the little arrow next to the mic button, he can change the feed of where it's going to. So, yeah, you're quiet again. So I could just tell you real quick, there's a little up arrow next to the mic button. If you click that, you might be able to choose where the microphone is coming from. And then you can choose the computer instead of the mic. It might have just stuck there on the mic even after you pulled it out. I'm not sure. Or, I don't know if you're on a Mac, if you go to System Preferences, you can change it. But it's okay. So, you know, one thing that the data showed, while we're taking care of this, one thing that the data showed is that reciprocation matters, right? This idea of trading value. And whether you know it or not, if you're searching for a job in industry, you're looking to exchange value. You want to add value to the company by being a fit for the position that they need, right? Meeting the requirements.
How about now?
Oh, yeah, that sounds great. Can you hear me?
Perfect. I can hear you guys now too.
Great.
Start with the.
That's all right, John.
Over there.
Thanks for jumping on. Yeah, so you heard us talking a lot about reciprocation, cooperation, trustworthiness.
Yeah.
From you and your experience in this field, did that resonate? Maybe you can explain just a little bit about why these things are so important today.
Yeah. Well, I think that, especially in Western culture, but I'd say primarily everywhere, that we've kind of lost the understanding of the humanity of people, like data and big science and artificial intelligence. You know, those command a lot of attention, and I think people have lost sight of. It's still, most businesses are being done between two human beings,
Yeah.
and at the core level, our DNA, we're wired for reciprocity. And there's studies going back. You mentioned influence, which it can be used for good or evil, but there's hundreds of studies that reference reciprocity or the power of it. And Cornell, like giving a little 1 cent mint with the with the bill, your tip goes up like 20%. So I think that there's residue of it left, but I think anymore people are like, oh, we're just all about numbers and data. But what we found is that almost every industry is tied to that relationship first, emotionally, and then people will justify logically. It's not like there's one or the other. It's both and I think that whether it's a big company or small company, we lost sight of that.
Yeah, you're right. And so, one thing our listeners are always thinking about, and we always tell them, is getting job referrals. Like, you can have the perfect resume, you can have everything, quantitatively, like you said, the data says all this great stuff, it says great on paper, but at the end of the day, the fastest way to get hired, the most likely way, is through a personal connection, a referral. And we've kind of lost sight of that. We want to automate all of our LinkedIn connections. We want to automate an increase in everything that we're doing, but you've really, with your company, you've gone completely in the other direction. And so maybe you can kind of set the stage about how you got into this. Why did it become so important for you? I know you talk a lot about radical generosity. Why did that become your why?
Well, I didn't grow up with the right connections. I grew up a poor farm boy. I got really good grades. I'd never had a B in 12 years of school, and was going to go to school to be a doctor. Wow. Because I hated blue collar work, and I wanted to go do something white collar. And the only two things I knew you could do was go be a doctor or a lawyer. I thought they made all the money. And fortunately, when I went into undergrad, I had started a company, was making about $50 an hour working for Time Warner Cable, but I almost got killed twice falling off of a ladder. And I was like, this whole blue collar thing just isn't for me. Wow. And I read in that same time, I was dating a girl, her dad was an attorney, and he was a rainmaker. Like, every deal in town came his way. He was always this, like, person that was liked and trusted and top of mind. And what I noticed, when you're poor, you notice when people are generous. And he was, not because it was a tactic, he was just radically generous with people. Like he'd find deals on noodles, buy like $20,000 worth of noodles, and everybody at church the next Sunday ended up with like 20 cases. And I'm like, Paul, that was 20 grand. Why would you do that? And he said, did you see their smiles? And I'm like, well, anybody would smile if they got a year's supply of noodles. So I interned with a company called Cutco, the knife company, which they've worked with about 1.5 million college kids. They have an amazing product. But I went to him and I pitched him the idea of giving away Cutco pocket knives to all of his clients. They're CEOs of like insurance companies and wealth management firms and, big, all kinds of companies.
Yeah.
But they're mostly men. And I thought they're into the outdoors and hunting and fishing. Maybe Paul will buy pocket knives. And he changed my life forever. He said, John, what about the paring knives? Got to order 100 of those, which is like $5,000, $6,000 worth of paring knives. I'm like, Paul, why would you give a bunch of CEOs a kitchen tool? And I'll never forget it. It was 18 years ago. It was like it's yesterday. He said, John, the reason I have more deal flow, the reason I have more connections and referrals and everybody likes and trusts me is I found that if you take care of the family in business, everything else takes care of itself.
Wow.
So for me, it was like this lightning, bulb or lightning bolt moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, Paul understands relationship building. And so I started to mimic what I saw Paul doing because I didn't have the right relationships, the right connections. And I started to get open doors with like pro sports teams and places that a farm boy from Ohio, who years ago was milking goats, had no business being on the sidelines or in the pit crew with the NASCAR teams. And this whole med school thing, I can go be $500,000 in debt, or I can run with this whole business model that I think nobody really knows about. And I've never looked back.
That's amazing. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I want to approach this from how I used to think, let's say 10 years ago, because I hear people say, be generous and give, and it'll come back to you. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Show me the data that I will get something back in return from this before I give it. Because there's so much uncertainty when you give, when you approach it from, I think, a standpoint of never having seen the long-term benefits, right? Because it's very strategic. And it has to be. If you go into it tactically and say, okay, I'm going to give this now, how soon am I going to get something back? You're definitely doing it wrong. So how did you change your mindset to be able to deal with the uncertainty of adding so much value and actually see the results where it's going to make things better for you, even business-wise? We're talking about, again, we're talking to people who, through the academic system, after spending most of their life in academia have a very, it's easy, and I'm speaking for myself especially, easy to have a very limited mindset and a very kind of scarcity mindset. How did you switch over to more of an abundant mindset and adding value mindset and just knowing in the long term it was going to pay off?
Yeah, well, I think two things. One is I got to hang out with, for a couple of years, a living, breathing example of it. Paul, my original mentor, was the most successful person I'd ever met. He owned the oil wells, the banks, the gas wells. And I'm like, he's not the smartest guy. He's just the most top of mind and most liked. So I got to see it firsthand example. And I'm like, when I'm 60, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. The other thing is I started to test it. I started to, as a college kid, instead of buying beer, I was spending $200-$300 per gift on gifts. I'd buy a Cutco carving set. I'd engrave the CEO's name, spouse's name, and I put a little handwritten note inside that said, carve out 5 minutes for me. I promise it'll be worth your time. And 2 weeks later, in my dorm room, I'm getting a phone call from his assistant. This is a $200 million company. And they're like, Mr. Jones wants to meet with you. And I walk in the one suit I have. And the CEO is 65 years old. And he's like, I thought you'd be 50 years old, some seasoned sales executive. I'm confused. Are you here to sell me knives? I'm like, no, I'm here to help you and your 1,000 sales reps do exactly what I did to your top 10,000 relationships. And I walked away from a lot of those meetings with POs for thousands of knife sets. So I got to test it out in the real world. It's great when it works in a test or in a study, but I get this, I was investing at the time about $500 a month in gifts. That's all I could afford because I was paying for college as I was going through a private university. But I got to see I'm getting meetings, I'm getting referrals, I'm getting deals done. By the time I was a senior in college, I was Cutco's biggest seller, not because I'm a good sales rep or a good salesperson. If you would have saw me with my glasses on and my Mickey Mouse tie, literally, you'd be like, this guy's going nowhere. I was a country bumpkin. And so I got to see how people responded to receiving something that was personalized and wowed and included their spouse, and that was a surprise and a delight that wasn't expected. So really, a lot of what I teach people are like, what's the data? I'm like, well, I can give you a bunch of data, but here's 100 stories before I was age 25 of where it worked. And here's the ROI. Like, I invested $1,000 and it turned into $100,000 over the course of 3 or 4 years. And so I think that if I hadn't had Paul to prove it out, I probably wouldn't have started investing in it. I would have been like, this is weird. Like, I'm poor. I don't have money. I'm a poor college student. I would have made a bunch of excuses. But I think because I really admired Paul and I saw the fruits of it, that I was like, I saw his relationships. I saw his quality of life. I was like, man, I want not just his success, I want his quality of relationship. And that it drew me in.
That's incredible. And so John here has actually tied together a lot of things from the last couple of radio shows, right? The importance of mentorship, right? Seeing it in action with somebody who's 5 years ahead of you, 10 years ahead of you, very, 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 very crucial in business overall. But also the psychology of the story too. Yeah, you want to have the quantitative data, that's important, but also look at the qualitative data, look at the stories of how this is changing, and do a little experiment yourself, right? Like John said, can you go to one less happy hour? Can you spend, not watch Netflix that month, whatever it is, even as a grad student, even on a postdoc stipend, even if you're unemployed, and take that $5, $10, get a gift, send it to an employee working at a company, right? Somebody you've been talking to or someone who's impressed you, another PhD that has made the transition as a congratulation to them. See what happens. Just test it out. The results will really surprise you. I mean, the bond and the rapport you'll have with that person it'll be, otherworldly compared to when you're just sending a networking script or saying hi or sending a message online like everybody else is. So great stuff there, John. I appreciate you sharing those stories. One thing that I found very interesting when I was talking with your team was, gifting from an international perspective. And I think the story that came up was like, you talked about sending these knives because you can use these play on words, like if you can carve out some time or you're a cut above the rest, which I love. But, we always get a lot of questions about, okay, internationally, in some cultures, maybe it's weird to gift. Do you have any examples of some differences internationally? And the one that came to my mind was, sending a knife in Japan versus elsewhere. Maybe you could just talk about briefly.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's no question that gifting works anywhere on the planet, but some of the rules are different and some of the things that you're going to send are different. It's an old wives' tale that if you give a knife, it severs the relationship in certain cultures. And so even in the U.S., probably 4 or 5 times a year, we get a request. We're like, can we send a penny with the knives? Because if you give something and if they give something back to you and buy the knife, then it's no longer bad luck. It's no longer in bad taste. So we've gotten very used to building even our core programs and signature programs like the knives. We've been able to build out and say, how can we make this work? Because the last thing you want to do is invest good hard-earned money, whether it's $10 or $10,000 or $10 million, have a negative consequence, and be offensive with your gift. Like, people are like, oh, it's the thought that counts. So I'm like, no, it's the thoughtful thought that counts. And so a lot of times people make excuses and they send lame gifts or they send offensive gifts or they send gifts that are trinkets and things with logos on it. And I'm like, you're almost better off to not send a gift at all and to do the nicest, most thoughtful note, handwritten note that takes you an hour to write on the planet. And statistically, if you would read that note to that person in person, your gratitude and joy goes up, and so does theirs. Like, there's been studies and research done on that specifically. And so there's no question that there's certain things that you need to tweak the rules. But I don't care if you live in Africa or Japan, like, we all love to be acknowledged and shown gratitude and made to feel like we matter. And what's funny is the higher up the food chain you go, the more those people are in ivory castles and oftentimes don't get the gratitude. So you think, oh, they already have everything that they want. They get notes all the time. But oftentimes it's lonely being a CEO of a bigger organization because they don't have anybody they can confide in. They have nobody that they can really, that's a peer. Their family doesn't understand them. And so oftentimes somebody's saying, hey, you're doing a great job. I respect the way you're leading. I respect that. Can you give specific examples? I tell people, if you don't have the money for a great gift, I spend $9 on my letterhead. It's a piece of steel. And I handwrite with a Sharpie, and I can send that anywhere in the world. And people, I don't care if you're in Japan or if you're in country America, like, people freak out in a good way. And they're like, wow, somebody took the time to write a note. And I've never seen letterhead on a piece of steel. So you can get creative with even, if you spent really, spent $10 on 10 pieces of letterhead, that's really nice cardstock, that's really thoughtful and classy and shows, that you're different than the other 1,000 applicants, I think is a simple way to take something that's insignificant and make it significant.
That's incredible, right? So I love that example, and I've seen these steel plates that John's talking about here from Jason Gignard and some others in your circle, and it's incredible, right? Yeah, $9, huge impact, and we're always talking about differentiation. You want to differentiate yourself from other job candidates. These are ways that you can do it with really overall very little effort. It's just that startup energy to get used to doing it and to change your mindset. So very valuable stuff to do. I wanted to ask you for any examples. Well, let me first say this is a mistake that I've made, what John is saying. And one thing we talk about a lot too is thinking about things from your audience's point of view. You've heard him say a couple of times, like, don't put your logo on a gift you're getting. This is what I did, for Cheeky when we were first starting out, like Cheeky Scientist on everything. And it was only fairly recently that we started thinking, okay, what's actually important to the audience, right? To you, PhDs, and you want to, and that's where we came up with the remember your value as a PhD, these things that matter to you, using your name, not a logo, this kind of stuff. So it's not natural to think about, but if you can, start asking yourself what your audience wants, you can change the way that you're interacting with people, and you can build trust and rapport much faster, get referrals faster, etc. John, I know you have some great stories in terms of gifting, and hopefully we'll have time that I would love to hear the Brooks Brothers story. But do you have any from like people who are trying to get jobs or get promoted, whether it's at the C-suite level or otherwise, where gifting has really worked, especially if there might be, where you can't send like an expensive gift to a hiring manager in some cases, right? Because they often can't accept it. But maybe something along those lines, or somebody gifting an employee where they've been able to climb the ladder in their career by doing this.
Yeah, we have a number of clients where what's interesting about gifting is that when you do it thoughtfully in a classy way without asking for anything in return, we've got a couple different people where they've just done simple small things within their organization. And what's interesting is people don't realize that within corporate America, things are fluid and people leave and go to another company, and they might not be in a position of power right now, but they are when they're at that new position. And so I've seen a number of times where it was a note, it was just a thoughtful, like something that was for their kids. They realized their kids was really into something and they had a connection where they sent something. I saw one where they gave a gift and it was just like a personalized dog collar for the dog. And people treat their dogs better than most people treat their kids oftentimes. Like people's pets are one of the core, we call it the inner circle. You take care of the assistant or the team, take care of the spouse, take care of the kids, take care of the pets. But where that literally landed them a position of significance over in Dubai as a direct result of the gift that they gave to a CEO before it was their dog. And obviously this person's making $5 or $10 million a year. They can buy their dog whatever they want. But the act of saying, hey, I realize this is important to you. I'm not going to make the gift about myself. I'm going to acknowledge your love for this animal. Sounds cheesy, sounds silly, but to your point, like when you make the gift, a gift by its very nature is recipient focused. Most people confuse what a promotional item is and a marketing tool is and what a gift is. And I tell people, think about what you would do for your closest relationships if you couldn't afford something, but you're going to their wedding. Like it doesn't, like I used to make fun of mugs as being like the worst gift on the planet because it was like the cheesy corporate coffee mug. But we started
have some of those in the back.
So what you got? But I've seen where people have ordered off of Etsy, and we work with an artist specifically that the mugs are in the hundreds of dollars. But I've seen this mug produce more value for our clients and people that they've given them to, because nobody feels bought off by getting a mug. But the mug carved into it is their whole life story and their character values and who they are as a human being, and then the artist makes a they've gotten popular. There's now stuff like $600. Originally they were way cheaper. But I've seen people like move to action more from that than from a $20,000 Rolex watch being given.
Wow.
It's because it's almost like we all want to be known. We all want to be known as an individual, as a human. And it's almost like winning the Oscars or an award. And so when you can tie in a gift and acknowledge somebody for their character values and who they are and the leadership that they have and who they are as a human being. That's why the note works so well, but I think that there's other things that are more handmade or that are super personal that say, hey, I see who you are, and a lot of other people are tearing you down. And what's interesting in corporate America is if you're known as a giver, instead of having a bullseye on your back, people tend to want to see you succeed. Like it's a weird, simple concept, but when you're as a giver, like people are looking out for you, they're more likely to push you up. Whereas if you're a taker or somebody that's just selfish, I've seen it in corporate America where because somebody is the giver, they weren't the smartest person, but they had everybody wanting to lift them up. And so I know my buddy Jim Schertzer, who's moved from company to company. He's the way I originally got into NASCAR was he was a client, and he brought me in there. He was always looking out for me, but he was a giver, and he's not the smartest guy. He's a hard worker. He's sharp, but people want to see him succeed, and he's all about the handwritten note and the follow through and the details and the little gift, remembering somebody's kid's name. Like those little things go a long way.
That's awesome. And I guess, the last question I want to end on, and I'll give you a second to think about it, is, what is something actionable right now that a PhD or someone who has never had an industry job, somebody who's been in academia their whole life, you said you've worked, with college people before, what is something they can do right now to start carving out time, I keep coming back to your little quip there, to start giving, and for those of you listening, while John thinks of that, how much time are you spending right now giving actual value? Even just sitting down to send a personalized, very detailed message online is a lot for most of you because you're just not used to doing it, right? So, but what about sending a personal note? And if giving in today's world is the biggest differentiator because nobody's doing it, nobody's even really sending direct mail anymore, everybody's just sending email messages, they're clogging up everything online. If it really is the fastest and most quality way to get ahead, why aren't you doing it? How can you start doing it? So John, what's like just a quick practical takeaway to end on in terms of how you can start exercising these ways to add value now?
Well, two things. One, I'd say is that it has to become a daily habit. Gratitude is something that you don't just wake up and like do it sporadically. Like there's a book called The 5-Minute Journal that I think is a great daily action of like what are the three things you're grateful for? If you took that mindset and say, who are the 3 people I'm most grateful for? Who's believed in me early on? Who's believed in helped me get to where I'm going and where I've been and whatever else. But I think I call it the gratitude muscle. I think that people are like, oh, you just must be a really great gift giver. That must be your love language. If you're familiar with that book. I'm like, no, my love language is words of affirmation because I'm naturally an introvert. And when I give somebody a gift, they give me words of affirmation back, which makes like, I'm not the guy at the event that's like the life of the party, telling the funny joke and whatever else. I'm the guy that's more likely to be sitting down having a one-on-one conversation. And so what I'd say is that most people get excited and they're like, I'm going to do this. What gift am I going to send? And what's most important is identifying the 5 or 10 people that are most important. The who is way more important than the what. Because most people haven't taken a chance to look at their network and say, who's poured into me, who's important, who do I need to have in my circle, in my advisory team? Who are the 12 people, board of advisors, that over the next 20 years are going to be most important? And who are the 12 people that got me to where I'm at right now? And how do I consistently show gratitude to those people? I think, it's like anything else. If you don't have a plan, if you're just like going to do things randomly and haphazard, which is how most people do giving, they do it whenever they're inspired to do it versus making it a consistent practice where every single day they're writing down, they're writing notes, they're making it part of their ritual. When you can start to identify the who and start to get good at the gratitude side, like I'm actually not a good gift giver. I've just thought about it for 18 years straight and been around good people and learned from my clients. And because of that, I've worked the muscle because I think anybody can be a great gift giver. All it takes is thought, intentionality, planning. Like you can be good at anything if you put enough focus and intention on it. Most people are like, oh, I suck at gifts. Ask my wife, ask my husband. I'm like, if you would just listen to what they're talking about and what they care about, and you would engage them in that, like that's the funny thing about giftology is people that have read the book are reaching out from like Vietnam and places all over the world, and they're like, I thought it would change my business, but it's actually changing my marriage. Because at the end of the day, like all we're talking about is how to engage people and be more thoughtful in our relationships. I tied it to business because everybody wants to tie it to ROI and revenue and whatever else. But what I didn't expect was how many people started to put these into practice and say, holy crap, all of my relationships are getting better because I'm actually listening to what they're saying and what's important to them, and I'm taking action on it versus giving a lip service.
Excellent. So thank you very much, John. Really appreciate having you on. Thanks for making time. This was fascinating. And yeah, we've never had anybody speak about gifting in this way and make it so practical. So thank you for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Question in the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I was just hoping I could ask one question from the chat box.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Go ahead, jump in. What is it?
It was really good. It was, when is a good time to give someone a thoughtful gift, especially during a job search? And since I've read all of your books and I get your newsletter, and I know that that's something you kind of talk about in terms of the timing of when to send gifts. So I thought it was a really appropriate question.
Yeah, when is the best time? So what I'll say is that the best time is when it's a surprise and delight and it's totally unexpected. So I don't recommend gifts at what we call the ABCs of gifting. So no anniversaries, no birthdays, no Christmas. And people are like, what are you, the Grinch? I'm like, no, I'm not at all. I'm actually like, I buy gifts for my 3 daughters and at Christmas. But in general, if you want to wow somebody, nobody's wowed when they get a gift out of obligation. They get a gift because you tied it just to the relationship. It's just because. The only time I'll tie it to anything specific is if somebody gives me even 5 minutes of their time, because that's an asset that they'll never get back and that they invested in. Oftentimes in the C-suite or higher levels, like an hour of somebody's time could be worth thousands of dollars an hour, and most people barely send a thank you note. When you actually show people that you were listening, that you're not just trying to pick their brain. I hate that term. Trying to pick your brain basically means kind of waste your time and use your time for free for my own benefit and be selfish. And so I think that we call it planned randomness. Like I'll lay out a plan of when I'm going to send out gifts to my top 500 relationships. The person who's receiving the gift has no idea when it's coming, but we have a 12 and 24 month plan of what's going to go out and when. And so the recipient feels surprised and delighted, but we actually have budgeted for it, planned for it, executed on it. And really that's why a lot of companies hire us, is to lay out that plan and then execute, because everybody has good ideas. It's where the execution of it is, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Amazing. Thank you. Great question. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for whoever asked it. John, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And just before we bring our next guest on, to kind of wrap that up, you can see how this would apply to you, right, in a situation such as an informational interview. Like instead of thinking you send the gift right after the informational interview, maybe you send the gift before, unexpectedly. Maybe you continue to send gifts to that person, year over year, because they're going to keep climbing the ranks in industry. They're going to keep being an advocate for you. And like John said, as you do this, people are going to start supporting you and pushing you forward. So please thank John in the chat box. Again, go to his LinkedIn profile. We're going to put his LinkedIn profile up. John, hopefully that's not the hug of death for you, but you're going to have a lot more PhDs in your network than you've ever had before. And also please go to his Giftology book website. If you have not got that book, get it on Amazon, get it on his website. Great book. And anywhere else to find you, John?
I would just say, is it appropriate for me to eat my own dog food and give a gift?
Yeah, wait.
To your tribe?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Sure.
So a lot of times people will ask me, John, like, I don't have the money to hire you, but can you just tell me the things to avoid? Like, give me like the bumpers, like when I take my kids bumper, bowling, so I don't go in the gutter. And so a lot of our clients, we walk them through the 10 worst gifts to avoid giving, which gift cards are on there, consumables, ironically enough, are on there, even Apple products are on there. And we give an explanation for not only what not to give, but why. If your tribe goes to thegiversedge.com, they can download for free the white paper. It's just a one-pager of like, here's the 10 to avoid. If you would just follow those 10, especially in business, now there's always anomalies and reasons that you can break the rules, but in general, if you follow those principles, you don't have to go buy the book, you can, but that's a free gift that at least get you started in the right direction.
Thank you very much. And the URL, one more time to make sure we have it, was?
thegiversedge.com.
thegiversedge.com. Yeah, I need to download that because I'm pretty sure I have like 15 fails from this interview. I should have talked to John earlier about gifting. So cool, thanks. No, just kidding. But that's awesome. Thanks a lot, John. Please thank John in the chat box. We have that link in there, The Giver's Edge. Make sure you go to that. Please, again, thank John. Go to LinkedIn and show your support for his book by checking out his book too. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here for our next guest that we're going to jump into. Yuri has been waiting in the wings. Very excited to have Yuri on. And we have a great tie-in here. So Yuri has a great story about how he went from being unemployed to getting into a top industry position, and how a lot of that was changing his mindset and his strategy. He is currently a medical science liaison. He's been a medical science liaison for Bristol Myers Squibb and Celgene, two of the largest and most successful companies in the pharma and biotech industries. And he is a big proponent of adding value first. He had a great post a couple of years ago when he first got hired, where he called it AVF. Great little acronym to remember it and to kind of chant it as a mantra in your brain to always remind you, add value first. It's just not something we're used to as PhDs. So I'm going to bring on Yuri here, and he should be able to start his video. So Yuri, I'm going to bring you on. I'm going to unmute you if you're ready. Let me do a quick intro for you though. So Yuri received his PhD in microbiology, immunology, and molecular genetics from the University of Kentucky. He did 2 postdocs and had a role as a senior investigator. His first role in industry was an MSL at Bristol Myers Squibb, and now he's working at the Celgene Corporation under the umbrella of inflammation and immunology. How are you, Yuri?
How's it going, everybody?
Good. So if you can see in here, Yuri, can you say hi, Yuri, in the chat box? So Yuri, do you remember that post I'm talking about where the
Yeah. So I think it was a post right when I transitioned into my first BMS role, and kind of like one of the biggest takeaways from the whole networking process and interviewing and transitioning. And yeah, like you said, it's essentially you want to provide value first, but it starts, it starts in your daily life. It doesn't start like when you network and when you talk with the other professionals. It starts with your wife, with your kids, well, with your colleagues in your lab, with your friends. That's where it starts. Like you can. It's very easy to start there and then kind of move on. And it's a daily habit, and you always want to kind of think, what can you do to your wife's working, she's stressed. What can you do to help her? You can maybe fold laundry, do dishes. I don't know, sweep the point. I don't know, just basic things. Like what can you do? What can you do for your kids? Like help them with. Like listen to their stupid stories, like little, like instead of being on your phone all day, you know what I mean? Like basic stuff like that. And then it kind of translates into your professional life, where you when I was networking, some things would be like buying them coffee. Like I always a big proponent when you taking somebody to lunch, an informational lunch, or any type of meeting, always buy. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they make way more money than you. You're the one that's providing value. So this is one way you can do that by providing value. You can pay for their meal, and also you can ask them questions and listen to them talk, because everybody loves to talk about themselves, and that's another way of providing value. So and then after the fact, obviously this giftology thing was amazing. I was sitting there taking notes because I definitely need to read this book. But yeah, there's some great clues. From is it David? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
John.
John.
John. Yeah.
John. Sorry. It's great ideas from John on types of gifts to give. But Ian, I've given written cards, and I've received written cards, and I think that's awesome. A lot of times, I'm trying to think. A couple of cool things that I've done and received also are when people really listen to what I do and what field I'm in, what disease state I'm in. They will give me like some really cool papers to read. It's really easy. You have access to all the PDFs in the world. Just listen to the conversation and listen to what they're doing, what landscape they're in, and provide, some disease state publication that recently come out that maybe we haven't been aware of. Yeah, we'll read a lot, but we don't read everything. And that's something that it's a great way to provide value. Maybe some tidbit of industry news that we may have missed, that relates to what we do on a daily basis. So there's a lot of great ways to do it. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I mean, you've covered so much ground here. I just want to break it down and tie in what Yuri's saying to what John said. Number one, start small in your closest circle first to get comfortable with it, right? Whether it's somebody at home or it's your kids or your husband, your wife, or your partner, whoever it is. Then branch out to your friends, people that are close to you, your colleagues in the lab, etc. Start small. You'll get more comfortable with it. It's really just the uncertainty. It's just like reaching out with your networking scripts. For some reason,
Right.
that can seem exhausting to you when you first start it. But once you get used to it, you get used to dealing with that uncertainty, and you get more certainty because you know it's going to be received well, and not
Right.
like, why are you giving me this, right? It
Right.
becomes easier and easier. So practice that. Like John said, flex that muscle, really, because you're
Yeah.
just showing gratitude.
Yeah.
And don't overthink it. Like, as long as you're being authentic and you're thinking about the other person, it can be a paper. It can just be listening
Yeah.
intently while somebody's talking to you and kind of reiterating what they say,
Yeah.
and being really intrigued, right? And focusing on, them and not yourself. Very, very small stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea about the kids and pets, that's pure gold. Like that's true in my industry too. Of course, I'm confined by very strict rules as far as gift giving. I can't do over a certain. Actually, I can't do any value, any monetary value. But again, a handwritten card is totally within the realm of what I can provide. And but also I can just ask about it, like, how's your kids' hockey league going? How's coaching going? And I don't remember Vadim. So Vadim and I always talk about this, just about just our careers, and what they do wrong when they teach is they need to teach MSLs how to be like human beings first, instead of being these like robots with dumb data on people. Because if you build that relationship initially, then everything after that will be really easy. And so how do you do that? But that's one way of doing that, is providing value. If you see somebody, buy a beer, ask them about their personal life, because they, how's their week going? Like they don't want to sit there and just listen to just like abstract science. Listen to what they want and provide that for them. Read their body language. It's all very, very important. I think it's way more important than you knowing the data and the science, because that's not hard for PhDs. The other part, the soft skills and the relationship building, is what's tough for all of us.
Yeah, and when you dive in with the data, what I notice a lot is like people start to posture because they're like, oh, I got to get in smart mode right now, and I got to showcase that I'm intelligent and I'm ready to, battle logically. But try disarming them first. A lot of times if I face a PhD who just starts at me with the data because it's what we're used to, I'm always like, hey, how are you? How's your day going? And they're like, there's always a pause, and then they you can see it in their body language. They get disarmed and like, oh, it's going well, thank you. How are you? Yeah, and then it's just a much more comfortable conversation where you're not sparring, but you're actually coming together and like you're collaborating.
Yeah.
And Yuri, I have this. Maybe you know about this already, but when I was working for Bio-Rad, and the Sunshine Act had just started and everything, and you're right, you can't give any gifts of value at all.
Yeah.
I read this book. It was called People Buy You, and it was this great story about this, a salesperson who was in a similar thing, or maybe he was a liaison or some combination of both. And it was, somebody who basically had access to a bunch of KOLs.
Okay.
And he could never gift her because of the rules, and she couldn't accept it. So her kid played basketball, and she was always talking about her daughter playing basketball and being on varsity, et cetera. So he brought in a basketball, and he said, hey. And he was authentic, like they had built a relationship over years. And he said, hey, can you have your daughter sign this basketball and give it back to me? Nothing was given. She lit up, and he said he ended up getting 90% of their business after that. Like there was like a few month lag or whatever, but it showed that it's not manipulative to be creative in ways to make people feel special, to make their kids feel special instead of them, right? So this is something that you have to think about as a long-term beneficial strategy. Not strategy because you're just trying to get something out of it. Strategy because it's long-term and not just tactical.
And that's brilliant, actually. And another thing that you've always mentioned, and it's in the CSA modules, and I think it's in the MSLA modules. Just the whole idea of networking and providing value is you don't want to expect anything in return. And again, I'm sure John brought it up, but it's essentially you want to provide 10 things before asking for one, or never even ask for anything. That's the rule. And then for those who are that believe in karma, it's good karma to just kind of do good things for people and provide value like on many levels. So there's many levels of goodness here that you can do by providing value to your colleagues, your friends, and then on your professional level as well.
Perfect. And Yuri, before you go, I just wanted you to maybe you could tell the shortened version of how you were unemployed Because a lot of people can't even fathom that now. I mean, right now, you've grown your beard out. I could see you as unemployed. But if
on the top day of playing tennis. And
office work, yeah. No, it's important. But we'll actually circle back to that because it's important to know, you're in an MSL role. There's I know you spend X number of days in the year, but then you have some office days. It's a real intriguing career. But I want to say, you were unemployed. What change in your mindset, especially related to AVF, helped you get into the incredible role that you're in now at the Celgene Corporation?
Yeah, check this out. So I keep this in my desk all the time. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes. Right.
It's the booklet they give you, like an unemployment office. So it says rights and responsibilities while claiming unemployment insurance benefits. This is from this is I keep all these letters. And it's keeps me grounded and kind of grateful for where I am. Yeah, it's this little thing you just printed, and I have all these appointment letters too. Yeah, I have one right here. He's you're entitled to $415 a week. I mean, I can all that stuff, right? I mean, you can see it. So yeah, it's from 2011. Yeah, so I mean, it's stuff like that. It's if you think you've been down, that sucks. You were in there and in line essentially. You're supposed to prove to them that you were looking for jobs while collecting whatever $300-400 a week, and then there's a finite amount, and then that kind of runs out, and then you don't have anything, and then it's you have to find go work at Starbucks or whatever, which is nothing against Starbucks, but just but stuff like that, I keep that in my desk, and every once in a while I'll kind of come across and you kind of remember where you came from, and it keeps you grounded. But the mindset was it was tough. It was just a tough time, and I just tried my best to find something, to do something that related to my my expertise. So I started looking for more roles that would prepare me for the industry. So that's kind of what I did. So yes, maybe I wasn't in a place to get an industry job then, but I was looking at very relatable translational postdocs where FPI was maybe involved in clinical research, maybe collaborated with pharma, maybe was an MD. So stuff like that really drove me, and I was it's not a far reach to find a freaking postdoc, another postdoc. So I did that, and at my last postdoc, I always rave about my my PI in the last postdoc because the guy was just a phenomenal human being. Published a ton. It was very productive. It was very supportive. And he put me in touch with a few MSLs that he worked with. He was a big collaborator with AstraZeneca. He's a big cardiologist in town, and so it opened up a lot of doors.
Well, so that's kind of clear how your mindset. But I mean, looking back, right? So for those of you that maybe you couldn't see what Yuri was holding up very clearly, he held up his unemployment letter. He was unemployed, and he keeps it on him as motivation to stay grounded now that he's working very successfully in the MSL industry. And he held up, the amount, the $400 a week you get on unemployment until it runs out, and then you have nothing. And it's incredible. It's always so inspiring to me, in kind of a happy, sad way, to see so many PhDs end up unemployed, and to see them just transform their lives. And it's not because you didn't have. It's not like your value changed. Like if you looked at your value, your skill set, none of that changed. Right. It really was just your mindset. You didn't know what you didn't know. So if you look back, what was the one thing that really changed, mindset wise or otherwise, where you were unemployed in that dark place, and then what opened up for you? What was that initial, you saw progress in an area and you went for it? Do you remember what that was?
So I mean, the thing, really, you got to think, I kind of, some of us were athletes, and obviously you were an athlete, but really.
Obviously.
But from my competitive days, I know some of us weren't in there, but and it's kind of a good way to think about things just in general. Do the things that you can control, right? So what are the things in your life that you can control? So now I was a tennis player, and if I'm playing a match and I'm playing somebody who's just hitting winners on me, well, I can't control that guy's just better, but am I giving 100% in this match? Am I just hustling for everything? And I wasn't. Like when I like initially lost my job, I was like, they're like, screw this, like this sucks, like I don't want to do anything, like this, my PhD is worthless, you know, we're all kind of all there. Then I was like, well, that's BS. I need to kind of pick myself up and do the things that I can control and really just give 100%. And 100% with networking, providing value. What are some of the next steps to get to where I want to be? I don't think industry was even. I wasn't even thinking that far ahead. I was thinking more of like, listen, let's kind of get back on track here. And I was thinking maybe academia. So I didn't have a very clear goals, which was also a problem. So I think if you have a clear goal in mind, all these things will be much easier for you.
And I like that.
Like, okay, let's just kind of clear this hurdle first. Get back on your feet, and then we'll go from there. And we'll cross the industry bridge and we'll get to it. But if you have I think bigger goals are way more important. And you talk about this, and I always recommend that. I just didn't. I don't know, and I didn't have that, which made things harder for me. I didn't have like the MSL thing seemed so far away at that point. It wasn't even realistic at that point. But then after I did my goals like for a while, it was kind of like, oh yeah, I could totally do this. And
Yuri, as usual, you just covered a ton of ground. So let me break down what Yuri said here, because it's crucial no matter where you are to follow these steps. Number one, your locus of control. Focus on your locus of control, not the things you can't control. It's real easy to have that victim mentality and complain like, oh, I should have done this differently. That's outside of your control. You can't change the past. What can you control right now? There's so many studies that say more than anything else, what will dictate your success in life is can you focus on what you can control and slowly expand that locus of control. Number two, do you have a goal? A physical, a goal that's there that you actually understand. For me, it was figuring out a job title. I was like, application scientist. Does this exist? Once I had a goal, I was able to achieve it. That's how most PhDs are. And then what Yuri said too, and this is what we'll end on, is be gentle on yourself. Okay? Beating yourself up, which PhDs, we're really good at beating ourselves up, right? We're really good at being critical of ourselves, not just critical of the data. Be gentle on yourself and realize there's going to be a growth curve here. No matter how fast you learn, there's still going to be a little bit of a growth curve, because you're literally going from zero experience in gifting or adding value or networking to baby stepping your way up to actually having some kind of network and experience in that area, and you'll get more and more comfortable. So Yuri, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you everybody.
Please thank Yuri in the chat box. That was great. All right, so this ends the public portion of the radio show. So thank you for joining us on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on Twitter. We will see you guys very, very soon with another live radio show. Before you go, if you're interested in learning more about transitioning into industry, go to phdsgethired.com. phdsgethired.com. That's the easiest way to remember it. Put in your name and email. We'll send you all of our free material, and we will send you details for getting a free seat at our resume webinar tomorrow. Tomorrow, Thursday, September 13th at 1 p.m. and again at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you joining us on Facebook here, yes, you can turn those off, Cheney, for YouTube and Twitter. Thank you both, YouTube and Twitter. We'll see you soon. For those of you on Facebook here, we're going to put a link in the comment box for you, and I'm just going to show you it one last time. The page that you can go to, the best page to go to is just PhDs Get Hired. If you put your name and email here, we will